I'm a podcaster and electronic musician and producer. I've been interviewing independent musicians since 2018 on my Spotify podcast. And we have on the line today Bone Cult, a UK Death Electronica duo. So welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
So you guys, it's interesting because you guys have got like the stagecraft that I've always been inspired by. It. Anybody's ever seen the Ghost? We kind of been doing this kind of stage persona of the Ghost or Josephine Electric. So you guys wear masks on stage. You got like a light show, and I've seen that you've had influences from like a Prodigy, Daft Punk, Basement Jaxx, and I hear a little Trent Reznor in there too. But like maybe talk about how you came to become Bone Cult.
Yeah, it's a good question to be fair. Well, when we started playing about was it 8 years ago now? Yeah, it was completely different to what we're doing now. It was a guitar and bass sort of Death from Above 1979 sort of thing, like a guitar which was through a bass amplifier and like really like sort of heavy drums and stuff. Completely different to what we did now. So it had no electronics in it at all, did it, Rich?
No.
So yeah, it was almost like a different band altogether, if I'm honest. I can't remember really how we started doing the electronic thing. I think there was just so much of that sort of two-piece stuff coming out of the scene, like loads of those, Royal Blood.
Was it like a Jack White vibe, like a White Stripes?
Yeah, exactly. Like the White Stripes. There's so much of that was coming out. And I think that sort of turned us off to doing it. So naturally, we just started doing something different, just because it got so sort of commercial, especially in England and the UK, and it's really turned us off.
But that's the problem. The record industry likes to burn a genre or an act to death. As soon as you get Beyonce, you get 100 Beyoncés.
Yeah, exactly.
You get 100 Pearl Jams or 100 Nirvanas, and
absolutely,
then you kind of blow it out. That's what happened to disco. But it might happen to EDM.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's definitely like a wave of masked singers after say Deadmau5. Like people like Marshmello and stuff like that. But yeah, I think we just started doing something a bit more electronic because we just found it quite limiting anyway. And I'm sure as like you can just do so much more with electronic than just sort of band.
Yeah, because I mean a duo, you guys are well suited for the electronic genre, but I've been like a single soul act since 2016, and analog and modular synthesis. That's kind of where I come from, kind of like a progressive. My heroes are like Keith Emerson, Bernie Worrell, Stevie Wonder, guys like that. And I kind of come from the analog, kind of modular tradition of electronic music, like not to go against DJs or that type of thing, but I'm kind of like, a big stack of Moogs and modular gear is kind of how I present myself. But
I saw some stuff on your Instagram. Yeah, it's quite impressive, the collection you got.
Yeah, it's just like, and I came up with the stage persona because I do a female voice with my VT Roland VT3s and 4s vocal transformers. And I found, like, when I first started, I just didn't like my voice, and so I kind of transformed it into Josephine. And I just like the idea of being able to have like the way you guys have a mask. Like if I come out not trying to be like Ziggy or Camille, if I come out with this ghost kind of phantom thing, then you couldn't tell like who that is. And that was my whole thing, is like, if you're gonna have like a female voice, it's kind of cool to come out and not look like a female, because that's kind of obvious.
Yeah, sure.
But you guys with your kind of Death Electronica, how did you kind of get into that? It was like a goth like thing, or like kind of post punk? Where did you get the idea to go that way?
I think it was just, we were quite interested in just having the look of being a much heavier band than we actually are. So like obviously people hear the band name, they might see some images we were using, they're expecting a certain sound. So it was it's more interesting for us to kind of defy people's expectations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I did with Josephine, not to come out wearing a dress,
Yeah.
It's come out, that's somewhat obvious. It's kind of cool to come out with this kind of Death Electronica, and you're not exactly like a death metal band or something. You're not coming from, you're not trying to do that. You're doing something a little more interesting, which I think about electronic music. So you've been working on music before. You were kind of like a White Stripes kind of duo, kind of bare bones, Jack White type of thing, Black Keys type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then you decided, were you guys really fascinated by, I kind of a keyboardist and a modular synthesis. I've been fascinated with like, electronic hardware since like I was like 18.
Yeah, it's we do really enjoy it.
You guys get drawn into that?
Yeah, we really enjoy that sort of vibe and stuff. It's just, I'm sure, as you know, it gets so expensive financially just trying to collect the actual hardware. I know you can definitely get it on software, simulations and stuff like that, but it's obviously not it doesn't sound as good, and it's not as much fun either as having the actual hardware. But it just gets so expensive financially, and any sort of musical equipment is going to cost the earth, really.
I mean, your guitars and a decent guitar and bass and drum sensor and kind of same zone for those who like to use like hardware.
Yeah,
but I mean the software synths are really good, because I mean the hip hop community has always taken advantage of, like, the 808 was in the junk shop, you know, and you could pick it up for like $99 or $50, and then using like high MPC, the hip hop kids didn't have a basement, didn't have a garage. So I totally get using the soft synths, but it is like you said, like if you have a mini Moog, if you got like a Prophet, if you happen to get one of these type of things, they just have that kind of presence that's like having a Les Paul.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like having a Ricky Backer.
What have we got in so far? We've got like a TR-09, right?
Yeah.
And what's the Volca bass by Korg?
Yep.
Volca's
really
those
cool.
Things
I think that's we've only got that, and we got the FM as well. I think the bass is probably we've used that more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you got some FM synthesis. You like using FM synthesis a lot?
Yeah, we've got one. I find it's harder to get a good sound out of it for us. I think just having there's something about the Volca bass. I'm not sure if it's just because it's more of like an analog sounding one, whereas the FM is obviously digital. But I don't know. We just, when you've got that and you've just run it through like a distortion pedal, or like even just like an overdrive in Ableton, I don't know. We like the sound.
Yeah, I think what's this, I've always used my Moogs for my bass, kind of like a Moog heavy guy. But yeah, sometimes I'll use my Arturia and then run it through some like my spring reverb, because I got like a real spring reverb in one of my Moogs, and I use it like a pedal. And it's kind of like one of the cool things you can do with this analog gear. You can take something like a guitar and throw it through an envelope follower, and then you get all this kind of like Pete Townsend kind of Bob O'Reilly or Who Are You type of envelope construction or loop. Like it's a synth sound, but you're actually using a guitar to run it. And that's kind of a cool thing to do.
I think,
and guitar players, have always kind of figured out how to use synths. Like Eddie and Pete probably brought a lot to the synth area.
I think that was one of our.
Did you find
our first memories was picking up that Digitech synth pedal from like a pawn shop here, and I think so many people have done that and thought they were going to reinvent the wheel with this guitar. Do you know the one I mean? The green Digitech synth pedal.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a cheaper thing than grabbing an ARP 2600.
Yeah, it's
like not many people can find an ARP 2600, but if you get one, and you run the envelope follower, or you find a soft synth and you run an envelope follower, that's just core. You can always find a bass echo or something, find some old pedal. I'm into grabbing old pedals.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
like guys, we run pedals all the time. It's kind of one of our trade thing.
Sure, yeah. But we picked up a synthesizer and thought it was going to be like the start of the next Pendulum or something with electric guitars, or Muse. Muse with their like MIDI guitars, and it just sounded like complete ass, really. And I think there was a Roland
MIDI guitar back in the day before MIDI.
Yeah.
They were the guitar synth, and it actually was kind of cool because it actually did stuff that Rush used it.
Oh, okay,
and it actually was pretty cool because it was running through like a Roland analog synth, like an H7 or something type of technology, and that's a killer synth if anybody's ever heard one. But it's just like, so you're having this guitar that could kick off this Roland, very rare type of Roland monophonic synth, and it just sounds really heavy. It depends on how you do it. Like if you run it through something, I think the big thing is just being able to use kind of like the analog capabilities of a synth and to be able to trigger it with a guitar is kind of like the best way to do it. But if you're trying to do other things, sometimes they don't work.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'd really like to see some more, modern advances in MIDI guitar. I think that could be a really cool thing. Obviously,
Oh yeah,
I know that there are some Roland. You can buy a pickup, can't you, to install on a guitar? But I think it'd be so much cooler if you could just buy the guitar and it had the MIDI capabilities built inside already, and it didn't require like its own pedal. If you could just use that with any sort of synth or soft synth that you wanted, I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I guess you could use a keytar.
Yeah.
It's not,
I think what's
not
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've always tried to turn my Roland into guitars.
Right. Yeah.
If everybody's ever seen me, that kind of secret sauce of running a Roland into a Moog and then running it into a bunch of effect pedals and a bunch of other things kind of triggers what I can do. But it's because I never could really play guitar. So I said, he's like, I can play a board. So I'll just try to figure out how to, the whole thing about a synthesizer is we can fake other instruments, or we can try to be like other instruments. That was my whole point of becoming a synth player, was like, if I need some strings or I need horns. And I came from being a horn player. So I would bring a lot of horn aesthetics into my music because I knew how to do it. And I think that's one of the things about having a synth. Do you like the fact that you can like emulate all these other instruments that maybe you don't have money to get or have the ability to play, and then you've got that kind of framework?
Yeah, I think that's definitely cool. And you can take one sound, like you were just in a synth, you just picked a preset for, I don't know, like a violin, but you can put it through a guitar amp, and then you can put it on chorus, and before you know it, it doesn't even sound like that violin. It could be sound like something like a massive church organ. I think that's quite cool when you don't even know what you're listening to anymore. It just has so many effects on it.
Yeah, it's like sampling. Like I like samples that aren't obvious, not like Ice Ice Baby. I like to take a sample and make it so unrecognizable that it won't get a copyright thing on it.
Yeah. So you've got to really.
And then I can actually, then I just turn it into like a field recording. I grab it, and do some granular synthesis on it, and then it becomes like mine.
Yeah.
And it's just a new way of getting a tone. That's the way I like to do samples, though I know some people just like to do it to get the groove. I'm kind of like, I do all my grooves like from my analog drum machines and stuff. But I was listening to like your the latest single I could find was like "Feed on You."
Yeah, sure.
Could you give me a little bit of a backstory on how that song came about? We've talked about a couple of your songs. I want to start with that one.
I think that was really different to how it actually ended up being. I think the way it eventually sort of came into being, that sort of weird time signature was there's a plugin called the Rhythmizer, which I know a lot of rap producers use as like an alternative to Grossbeat, to half time stuff and speed it up. I think they just use it mostly just to get the half time on the piano and stuff like that, but it's got some really cool sort of Rhythmizer, like different syncopations and time signatures. And I think I accidentally put it on like an output, a bus of like a load of other instruments, and it gave it this sort of choppy feel, and it just sounded good, to us. So we just kept it. But it was kind of like a lot of things in the studio, just messing around until something cool came out of a mistake, really.
Do you find happy accidents trigger stuff more than trying to like really plan something
I'd
out?
say in electronic music, definitely. Like you can't really make that many mistakes when you're playing guitar and drums, other than like the odd harmonic and stuff. But when you're doing electronic stuff and you've got just too many options, I suppose, you're naturally going to end up just making a technical error just because of how much is going on, really. And I suppose it normally is like that, really.
Yeah.
If something sounds cool and you end up just going with it or sampling it, bouncing it to audio and sampling your own thing.
That's what.
So that kind of gets into my question about your song craft. Do you guys kind of come up with demos and show each other demos, or work it all in your home studios and then go to a full recording studio and work it out with a producer? Or do you guys, what's your style? Is it kind of like anything that fits the song, or you have like a certain way you record?
We mostly write in the same room. There are times when we'll work separately, just coming up with our own ideas, but I'd say 90% of the time we're always just working together in a home studio, and that's when we kind of feed off each other and like bounce off each other. Because sometimes if you're just working on your own, things too far in a direction that the other guy in the band's not going to be feeling. So I think it's both, you both need to be able to contribute.
That's kind of old school. Yeah, that's like the way I used to. I'm in my 50s, right? So when I was in my bands before I was just a ghost, it was always like in the garage, in the basement, and I might have a demo, like of a chord progression or something, and the drummer, I might have some basic 808 beat, and it's like no way I'm gonna really use it, but I give it to the drummer and he like really turn it into something, because I figure like a percussionist is gonna do way better than what I can do. And I might have a bass line worked out, but I like the bass player, he'd take that and kind of let everybody do what they know to do, how to do, and just take it as an impression and then come up with it. And I always loved that, and post, in the middle of COVID, I haven't been able to really do that other than like online collabs, which is totally different. But yeah, I miss doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think collaboration it just improves your whole way of working. I think because obviously we started out as a band, we would record or just write our songs together in a band room, and it was all live. And I think we know that is a good approach, and we kind of just apply that to the way we produce as well. Just so like we're just writing together, and you kind of just feed each other's off each other's ideas.
So when you guys write, what type of workflow do you use? What type of DAW? You're like Ableton or Pro Tools or?
Yeah, now it's almost exclusively Ableton. Really, we used to be solid advocates for Logic, but I think that was largely just because it had I don't know if you've used Logic, but it's got the drummer track, and that was obviously because neither of us is. Well, I was never really that much of a drummer anyway, so it just came out of necessity of actually having the drummer track, which was great to, just fill that role that we didn't have in the band. But after a while, I think you get sick of the same old loops and stuff. Yeah. And Ableton's just so much easier for electronic producers. I know so many people use it, like Skrillex and stuff, just to get ideas out quickly. And I always thought of it not really as a solid, DAW, just because I thought it was only good for getting ideas down in composition, and I thought, there's no way you can have the quality to record stuff. But I've completely done a U-turn on that. I think it's just so easy, and when you see other people using like Fruity Loops and stuff to make beats, you think, well, if people are making money off Fruity Loop music, then that goes to show you can make money off just about anything. To be honest, Fruity Loops or Reason, stuff like that. So now I've got no. Maybe just because we were too like snobbish about it, and we thought.
Yeah, I kind of get there myself, because a lot of what I do, I have all my Roland stuff, so it's got all their like the whole history of all the Roland drum machines are like embedded in a lot of my hardware, so I can like get to every like 727, 707, 909, whatever. I can get to any of them. But then lately, I've been using like a Teenage Engineering OPZ. Which is really interesting because it's a really different type of sequencer than like a 707 or an 808. The way you can do it has all these like step components. You can basically layer components on every step, up to like maybe 16 components coming off of every step. So it lets you do something that an 808 doesn't do. You could maybe get to the same thing, but this is very specific. And so
the pocket operator ones, is that what you're talking about?
No, they actually have a synth called the OPZ. It's the size of a TV remote, like the new version of an OP1. But what it is it's a sequencer, and it's like the OP1, but it's got really heavy sequencer in it. And it can run samples, and you can like use the mic to create samples, or you can bring stuff in, and you can just create these really interesting drum beats. And then I sample them into like a Morphogene sampler on my Eurorack, and then I kind of clip them up. But I like to do a lot of hardware based stuff because I'm kind of like an old school progressive guy. Like I was watching a documentary about Peter Gabriel one time for the Soul record. He took a bunch of drum takes, like 99 drum takes, and then re-spliced them on physical tape and just bounced them all around. And I'm kind of a big proponent of that type of construction, just because it forces you to do stuff that's not going to sound like anybody else. But that and my DFAM, which, you know, from Moog, my Moog drum, analog drum machine, it kind of gives me a lot of like my own feel. But yeah, I mean, Ableton can give you the same kind of capability to do that. But like I've been a big proponent of like DAWless recording, because I kind of started on a Tascam 4-tracker back in the 90s, and I've been like a big proponent of trying to do things in maybe the harder way, just because it gets you limitations. I find trigger things in music that, like, if you can't do something on the grid, you can't easily just move something, then you maybe have to work it on in a different way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like sometimes there's almost like they made it too easy and there's too much choice. I feel like sometimes you need some kind of limitations, but also just something to give you more of a focus as well, because you can just get so easily overwhelmed just by the different possibilities. Like if you've got like one synthesizer that you're using, you're going to try and get the most out of that, rather than scrolling through, you know, like 200 pages of different presets. You know? Yeah,
it's like if I take my Moog like grandmother and I play with the CV, I kind of got a point in time for that recording session, and it's not going to sound like anything else I did, because I always take all my CV chords out and then restart every time. And so every time I create, it's like a whole new timbre, you know, and then that kind of forces me to deal with what I was like a big proponent. Like, I read all the history on Moog, and the guy Robert Moog, he said he kind of felt like the universe told him how to build the Moog, and he kind of felt like it's a living thing, and I kind of listen to what my synth tells me, and like every day I turn it on, it acts different. You know, if you warm it up or don't warm it up, and you kind of go with where it's going to go that day, and don't try to make it into anything else. Be what it is. And then I find that style of recording kind of forces me, it gets me in a different direction than if I was trying to go do something else. But
yeah,
that's my style. But I was wondering, like, in terms of your style of recording, do you like have your reference points from the people you love, and they just kind of unconsciously come into you when you're writing a song? Or do you kind of say, well, I want to do this that's like this, you know, or you just let it kind of flow?
That's a good question. What would you say, Rich?
Sometimes it's definitely like the things we've been listening to, and sometimes we actually start a song just by using a sample of something that we like the sound of, and just get it into Ableton, and we're just working with it, and that can kind of start sparing just our own sounds when we start building, you know, layers to go with it, and before you know it, you've not even got that original song anymore, but you've kind of created a song around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes if you're not, you know, in the mood to get into the studio, at least you'll be in the mood to listen to like your favorite song at the moment, and you know, even just try sampling a song that you're, you know, excited about. It's a good way to at least get you in the studio and you know, get you active and proactive. You know what I mean? Because it can be so hard to apply yourself, especially in lockdown. You know, it's like hard to even like get up and, you know, go for a run or get out of bed or something, you know, sometimes. So the idea of actually going to the studio and, you know, trying to make something sometimes can be really daunting, you know, in lockdown. So at least sampling something that, you know, someone else has made and you're excited about, gets you in the studio, you know, and gets the ball rolling.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing to kind of get me going is I always put on Joy Division's Disorder.
Yeah.
And that song just triggers me in a certain way. It's like, wow, because that's like, to me, it's like the whole feel of new romantic, new wave kind of, you know, it's like the beginning, you know, before they became New Order, before Depeche Mode, before The Cure. You have this song, you know, it's got this synth line in it that's kind of buried. It's got this punk aesthetic, and it's like all the things I like about that type of music. And it's got this driving thing, and it's like, wow. And that always inspires me to kind of get into it. It's like if I listen to The Clash, like, yeah, European, you know, my European safe home.
Right, yeah.
Safe European home. Anytime I hear certain songs that kind of trigger me, like if I'm not inspired, it's like, okay, get back in that punk aesthetic, get that Kurt Cobain kind of vibe. And then like that always kind of drives me. I feel that you guys have had that kind of punk aesthetic. Is punk music part of what you're inspired by?
It's more of, we like the approach of punk, and we like the spirit of it. I don't think we listen to much punk music, but we definitely like the sort of the approach of punk musicians. Like, you know, we really like the DIY element to it, and I think like we try and be as self-reliant as we can, and like we live, you know, the times we live in now allow you to do that.
Yeah, that was the whole thing with punk, is like you don't have to be Jimmy Page, you don't have to be like Hendrix.
Yeah, exactly.
That you could have like an honest feeling and come at it. And, you know, in everything that's do it yourself is like, some people are very sophisticated. You can create like your own opera. You know, you could create very sophisticated pop music without, you know, because of the technology now. Again, if everybody's at their able, then you can go the Phil Spector route and go crazy layering and really tight compositional structure, or you can go for like a loose, like Replacements, or the Husker Do's of the world, you know, or Black Flag, SST, that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that punk aesthetic, what I liked about it is the honesty. You know, the reason why Kurt Cobain, I think he really hit hard, was the fact that it was like this honest feeling, compared to like if you were listening to Rat and Motley Crue and all that stuff, that was kind of like doesn't feel that honest.
Yeah.
But when Kurt came on the scene, it's like, wow. Then suddenly like grunge came about, because you get the, you know, you get the Pearl Jams of the world, you get the Stone Temple Pilots, you get, you know, all these bands, you know, Alice in Chains. You get this feel that felt like, okay, this is something more real again.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's something that's really lacking in modern music as well, is that sort of real element, in my opinion. You know, just even if you look at even at the American versus and the UK charts, they're not even dissimilar, really. And it really is just I can't see a single like guitar band or anything on the you know, on the top of the charts. So
yeah, it's interesting because we're kind of in this kind of phase where, like, to me, it felt like the 50s, where everything's like a single.
Yeah.
Like in the 50s, before like Beatles, everything's a single. Like the Spotify playlist has forced everybody to do 2-minute, 3-minute singles, and they're kind of like you know, like, you know, I don't know. It seems kind of not, some of them are kind of just beat oriented, without maybe having the heavy thought they went to like a Pink Floyd record, right? Or something that went into like, you know, any of the singer songwriters from the 70s. It doesn't seem like it's substantial. It seems like, okay, everybody's trying to do a formula, and it's cool. That's why I talk to indie bands like yourself, because I like to see people coming, because we don't even hear stuff like the Prodigy, you know, or Daft Punk or Basement Jaxx as much anymore. We've got more hip hop oriented stuff that's more kind of club oriented and EDM type of stuff that doesn't necessarily kind of get to the heartstrings. And that's kind of like what I like about music, is whether it's powerful or it's like some kind of heart song. But it's more heart, man, I mean, is like the heart of like, I know you're into it and you don't really care if you make money because you believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, even those bands you mentioned, like Daft Punk and Prodigy, like we listen to their albums, and even though they do have singles, and obviously they've had some like really successful commercial songs, but I feel like they're more about creating good albums. Like Daft Punk have only released how many 4 studio albums in about 20 years or something. I think that's a testament to their sort of album making craft. You know what I mean? They don't just come out with a single every 6 months or something.
Yeah, I missed the album. I mean, that's what I try to do with my music. Everything's like oriented toward an album. But this market, really, I have a niche market for that, because really everybody wants the 2-minute song, you know, or the 1 minute 30-second song. But you guys seem album oriented too. I mean, at least from your Death Electronica.
Yeah, obviously, like, because we've only released one full album, but we definitely like albums more than we like singles or EPs. It's just a question of we didn't feel like it was the right time to do an album before then, like because I think when you're a new band, especially in today's world, it's quite hard to get people to give you the attention of a full album. I think there's so much content out there right now, you need to grab people quickly, and I think that's where singles come in. But we're definitely going to be doing more albums in the future.
Well, I think a band always wants to have an album because they want a set list that, you know, they can kind of run through that has a theme, and the album or EP kind of gives you that way to put songs that kind of work for a show together. And that was like the traditional way bands used
That's
to work.
A good point. Yeah.
And now everything is kind of more geared toward playlist, which is not necessarily what you do when you do a show, because you're like one of 40 people or 30 people on a playlist. If you're going to do a show, you got to have a set of songs that's going to keep everybody in the same vibe, and that's where the EP album kind of still fits, at least for the artist to kind of build that. And I know a lot of artists actually have albums that they just release as singles, and then if they're doing well, then they'll put the EP out. So they still construct their work in kind of an album format. Maybe it's not released all at once.
Yeah, it's a good way of doing it. Like, it's kind of drip feeding out to people, because I think people can easily listen to an album which has taken, you know, a whole year to produce, and then it's kind of lost because there's another album coming out the next day. You know, thousands of albums are released every day now.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to consume. Whereas, yeah, you can choose to release things slower, just like single by single. I think that's an interesting new approach. I think
Yeah. I mean, I think I end up doing that. I think as an artist, I think we all end up trying to get playlisted, trying to deal with the way the market is now. I mean, we've got a little bit wider opportunities with the Bandcamps and the SoundClouds of the world, where you can throw things out. You can do mixtapes, you can do YouTube stuff, you can go on Twitch, you can do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the actual place where everybody hears us, like an Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal type of place, we've got to kind of deal with the way it is, and hope for it to change. But I was listening to Death Electronica, and I like Cruel a lot, and I also like Fragments. So maybe talk about Cruel.
Yeah, that was more of a band sort of sound, wasn't it, that we went for?
Yeah, that was just sat down with a guitar, I think.
Yeah, and just riffed it out. So
yeah,
I still really like doing that. I've got one of those Squire baritone guitars here, which is it was only about £300 when it came out, but they've been discontinued now, and they sell for about 900 online, so it's tripled in price. And it's obviously, especially in COVID, it's really attractive to actually sell it and, you know, triple the money on it. But I just can't let it go at the minute, just because you know, we still do like you know, yeah, just like, you know, using it for riffs and stuff, and it's just such a good riff machine. And, you know, sometimes there is too much of just playing synths, in my opinion, and it is good to just get back to playing like an acoustic, you know, an instrument, or electric in this case, but you know what I mean, like yeah, like, you know, a real bass. And even if you don't even use it, it's just nice to have a break in the studio from you know, just digital stuff sometimes, and let that sort of visceral energy out, and, you know, playing it sounds really snobbish, but like a real instrument, you know, whatever that means.
Yeah, well, I get it. I mean, I used to hear Prince used to talk about that all the time. It's like he had this statement that was like real music by real musicians, and people used to get mad at him. And like, but it was like, I mean, the guy plays 17 instruments.
Yeah.
so and he would self-produce his album since he was like 17. So I mean, there is something to be said about people who can actually play. And there's a difference between like a producer and a like a session musician, or like a producer and a jazz musician, or a rock type of configuration. It's a totally different feel. And I will say, you know, producers are artists, but, you know, like if I go see a band, I mean, I used to go see the Almonds. I used to go see Funkadelic, and I kind of like prefer to see like a band like a Funkadelic jamming on like a P-Funk song for like 20 minutes. That's just like what I like.
Yeah.
To see at a show.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember the last. Obviously, there's not been any gigs, but we I think the last gig that we went to was Glastonbury in 2019, and you can't get much more of an eclectic festival.
Yeah, it's everybody. You got DJs, you got full bands. I like that kind of variety. I like to go to clubs in New York that actually will have a punk band, have a DJ, have an EDM band, have like a folk musician, and they basically are letting everybody play everything. And so, because like everybody's taste kind of the playlist, they're kind of all over the place. And so I think it's cool to not be in just a narrow focused gig, It's kind of good to get you're exposed to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And Glastonbury's like a great example of really refreshes your ideas of what you can do, and the sheer production value that they have, really inspires you to want to up your game and stuff, like with the stages, and it's impossible to really come away from Glastonbury and not be inspired.
How about your light show? Is that something that you work with other artists that are into like that type of performance, or is that something you guys do yourself?
That's just something we've done for ourselves. I think it's because we've been to so many like small venues where they don't have any lights at all, or they've got like one power can in the corner which comes on and off intermittently, or it's like sound to music mode where it's just going every color you can think of. So I thought we should just bring our own, that then we know that it's gonna look the way we want it to look no matter where we are. Especially now, we use DMX this by Entech, which it integrates with Ableton, so we can program our live light show as we're performing, and so it's all integrated. We don't need a lighting guy to come with us, or we don't need to rely on anyone's help.
It only came out of necessity, really, just because it really was just almost depressing going to these small sort of club gigs and bars and stuff, and just the terrible house lighting that would be there, like Rich just said, they set it on like random mode, and it's just sort of scrolling through the spectrum of colors, and there's no automation, or it's not choreographed or anything. It just looked terrible, really. So we just thought we have, I don't want to do this and bring our own light show, but we just have to,
Yeah. I mean, I do that with the Ghost. I do a lot of my own visual stuff. Well, I'll pretty much make a video for every song, and if I go show up at a place that has a digital screen, then I'll kind of run them in the back of the videos I actually created, because it gives me a way to just present my vibe, And I've always been a big fan of like what Warhol did with the Velvets. I don't know if you heard, the Velvet Underground kind of started because he had this art kind of collaboration with the Velvets, and when they went on stage, they had these films running behind them, and they had like actors and dancers and all this kind of, there's a happening type of thing. And I've always been into that, the stuff that Pink Floyd did, just the kind of visual aspects for like psychedelic rock bands and stuff, but have that kind of vibe where something visual was happening, because part of the show, it's part of your stage.
I always appreciate when I see a band who's actually given some thought to how they look on stage, and how they can use light and they can use visuals. It just makes for a more immersive experience, rather than just showing up, playing your song, and then that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Bowie brought theater. When he created Ziggy and he created Aladdin and the Thin White Dude, he kept on creating all these characters for every new tour or album. And I always appreciated that kind of look. Even Freddie Mercury, he had a look for every period. And the idea that you become this other kind of character. I mean, Lady Gaga does it. Prince used to do it. Every album, he had a different vibe. And every stage show had a different look. The Sign of the Times stage was totally different than the 1999 stage. Every album had a different look, a different character. He was Prince, but he was a different version of Prince. Kind of like Bowie, and I always thought that it was kind of cool to do that and not just come out in your blue jeans and turn your back to the audience and play like a like Yes or Jaxx. Even though I love those bands, it's like I think they lost a little opportunity when they didn't go the way. Well, Peter Gabriel kind of, I like what he was doing, and I guess the rest of the band didn't like it.
No, I know what you mean. Like, we've always had this thing about bands who show up in just the jeans and t-shirts that they would normally wear to the pub, and it just, it's just, why wouldn't you want to make more of an effort?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think folk musicians I can see is part of their thing because they want to be authentic. But I think if you're into rock and into progressive music, or even jazz, my favorite jazz group of all time was Sun Ra. And in the 50s, Sun Ra dressed like Funkadelic. I think actually Parliament Funkadelic actually stole their idea. But Sun Ra, it kind of failed for them because everybody was dressed up like, Coltrane, Davis, and Sun Ra would show up dressed up like in aluminum foil capes and hats and looking like they were coming from Mars or something. But later everybody looked at that and said, wow, that is cool. But at the time when you push it, sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, I know, we always appreciate it more. I think it's just very much more memorable, and it just becomes part of the performance. And that's why we have the maps as well, just because it's just more interesting than just you present your normal personality when people come and see you at a show. They're not just seeing you; they're seeing an entity, which I thought was.
Yeah. What I like about when I was a Ghost, I used to play in New York. I come on stage with my Phantom mask, and I get off stage, and nobody really knew what I looked like, so I could just jump into the crowd and watch the other bands, and nobody knew it was me.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that fact that I could kind of, nobody really knows who I was. At least back then I used to have my mask on all the time, like
Yeah.
So you never saw who I really was. Now lately I've been like not wearing it sometimes just to do something different. But so let me get into another song. Like if you want to talk about like one of your favorite tracks from Death Electronica, like go ahead. Let me. Cause I have my own picks, but what would you want to talk to your fans about on one of the tracks on the record?
I think
which one?
Probably like the last track, Mansion, which is one that I like probably even the most, just because it's more of a sort of an experimental one where we didn't even try and follow a structure that we would normally use for when we're writing songs. It was just really like sort of an improvised feel to it. And actually, that one song transformed a lot from. It started as just a sort of a guitar riff. It's kind of like a mathy sort of an arpeggio, and I think it's Sam completely transformed it by making sort of a pulsating reverb effect on it, and that kind of just turned the song from just being like a straightforward lo-fi guitar into something more ethereal.
Yeah, I like that experimentation. Well, I've always been a big fan of people who do that type of work. It's just a lot of the bands I listen to. I kind of like glitchy, kind of not, is tight construction. Because I always felt like I loved Keith Richards because it's kind of like that kind of off time feel he brings into the blues. And then I like Neil Young and Crazy Horse, like on Tonight's the Night, because it's like it's kind of like falling apart, but it's still together. And I've always been like a big fan of like people doing experimentation in music and not just trying to construct what they think is like the pop sensibility, but more the art sensibility of it, and how that kind of conveys more honesty, I guess.
And I think that's one of the reasons I did like Mansion, is because it wasn't one that we knew that it wasn't going to be one we were going to pitch to playlists or try and send out to radio or anything like that. It was just more a sound we just wanted to create just because that's what we wanted to hear at the time.
I think that's why the album is such a great format, because then you have the space to put in experiments, to put songs that maybe aren't going to be the songs that are going to be the radio hit, but it gives you a full picture. Like an album to me is like reading a great American novel or the great novel, is because it gives you like a full picture of a band. That's why I love vinyl. You know, I grew up with vinyl, and you were kind of like, you picked up a record, you didn't just jump around. You kind of brought it into your basement, and you know, turn the lights down, and you're like, I'm going to listen to this whole thing. And I think that's why I am heartened by the fact that some fans of music are back into vinyl. And I've actually gone and done some experiments with putting out stuff in vinyl. And I've had a good response because the fans actually, it's the kind of fan, not that you want to choose your fan, but the fan who buys that tends to get what my band's about. Because they listen to the whole project, and they're more likely to come to the show and actually say they want one of the songs, you know, that's on the record.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets lost with streaming, because when you've actually bought an album, you can hold it. I think you value it more, and I think now, like, it just becomes like no one has a music collection anymore, which I think is just a weird thing. Like, the new generation don't go and buy their music album by album like people used to. So, you know, if you stop subscribing to Spotify, you've not got a music collection anymore, which is a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, you have vaporware. Yeah, where you had the CD. But I am heartened, you know, at least in the US, we've got a pretty big vinyl market. And it helps, like, when you go to Boston or New York and you've got like 100 copies of your record on vinyl, and you can sell them all at the show, you know, and you actually do better than you do on your streaming for that day. You know, and it's like, and I think the physical connection of being able to have your art concept, maybe your lyrics, like a poster, then person like starts to value your music, and I think it's more willing to pay for it than even a CD, because then they have something that feels more like real.
I agree. I think people are more likely to buy a vinyl if it's an album that they already know that they do like. I don't think many people would buy an album just on a whim these days. But
no, it's more like I use it as a kind of thing when I'm physically playing a gig. I'm more likely to be able to sell it than if it's on a web store and nobody heard it. So it's kind of like for the like hardcore Peg fans that show up at a gig, and I'm able to play more than one song. It's like a Peg show. I can actually, that works. It's like a micro level sales thing that you do, but it's a cool thing to get into, you know, because there are companies now that actually allow you to do very small batches, so it's not crazy money that you got to put into it. But yeah, I just think it's a good way to connect. I mean, there are people doing thumb drives, people doing cassettes. There's even this Russian company doing like reel-to-reel albums. They're actually on reels.
I can't believe that.
But it's called orbital recording, and they actually put things on reels.
I mean,
and you get a box with a reel of like.
I mean, you can't even buy a new reel-to-reel player, surely.
I think there are some companies selling them, and for some reason, Orbital is starting to do okay because of that. They have a niche market, but just like the cassettes. I mean, how many people have the cassette players? But people are selling the cassettes again. So yeah, it's just a physical, I think, connection to your fans is a cool thing to have in some way.
Yeah, that's true.
Besides a T-shirt.
Yeah.
So what are you guys working on for 2021? Are you working on like the single strategy or toward like
I think
an EP?
we've been working on material almost daily, to be honest, but we're just working on like a bit of like a rebrand and coming back with like a fresh sound and a fresh look, really, more than a fresh sound. Just rebranding everything, to be honest.
Oh, you're going to change your
suppose so, yeah. Like we want to have like new masks and just a new feel, really. I think everything that we've had is at least a few years old now, and it'd be nice just to come back with sort of a revamp. I think, I think we could, when you listen back to our songs from sort of like 3 or 4 years ago, I think our production's a lot better now, and it would just be nice to reflect that. Really, we've had enough time off now, a good sort of 6 to 8 months since like the album drops. We stopped like pushing that, really. So it'd be nice to come back with something fresh, really, rather than just another album of the same look and the same sound. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah. I mean, I had original Phantom version 0. I had a different mask, and then I had version 1.1. I have the mask I have now, and I'm actually working on version 1.3 where I found this really cool mask that I can actually change the LEDs on it to be like anything. So it can actually do lyrics,
really cool.
it can do pictures, it can do all this stuff. So and then it can do other faces. So then I can actually have Josephine's face on it, and then not have her face on it, and have words on it, have pictures on it. I've been working on a cape that does the same thing too. But yeah, there's always every time I think you got to kind of it's all set up when things open again that I can have like a different stage show. But yeah, I think every band, like I said, Bowie is a big favorite, and I liked his like Aladdin Sane, Thin White Duke, Ziggy. He always changed it, and I think that's kind of like once you get into this kind of stagecraft thing, I think it kind of becomes the evolution that you're going to do that. That's just because like if you're already in that mindset, you're probably going to
definitely. I think we're just looking forward to coming back with like a new upgraded version of the band. Really, like it's like you said, it's something new to attach to a new album, and people will be able to see that it's a new mask, it's a new album, it's a new take on it.
Yeah. It's kind of like you give yourself a new era. Like you think about Prince, you had the Purple Rain era. Everybody knows what that looks like, right? You have the 1999 era. Everybody knows in the Sign of Times era, like the most, readily apparent that they're very significantly different. It's like Bowie's Thin White Duke and Ziggy and even Freddie Mercury. His period of doing Bohemian Rhapsody versus his kind of, We Are the Champions look is a totally different look. And he did that, and these artists tend to do that when they realize how important it is to have that stage presence. And like you're saying, like you're going out there without the blue jeans on, actually trying to convey a feel or a theme to what you're doing, which makes it like an event.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's it. It's just like a landmark. It's kind of like putting it's like a new flag out to show what your band is and the direction you're taking.
Now, you guys, because of COVID, I know a lot of bands do collabs or they do production work with other folks. Are you guys doing that, like where you're working with other people, or you're totally
we've been asked to remix a few of our like friends' stuff before. Like a friend of ours called Baby Tap. We've remixed his over lockdown, and a friend of ours who worked on the latest Cyberpunk 2077 game. He works for like video game music and stuff. And he asked us to remix this other game called Hot Shot Racing, which we were happy to remix a track for that. That was in the last sort of month, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We've remixed a few people. It's very rare. I don't think we've actually ever collaborated from scratch with anyone on anything. Like, sat down in a room and actually collaborated. But we've remixed plenty of times for people.
That's cool. Have you thought about maybe you do that, or you want to focus on Bone Cold? I mean, a lot of bands, it takes a lot of energy just to keep your own thing going. So they don't have the time to kind of put it into other things that other people kind of like workaholics, and it's like, okay, I'll keep on working it even if I don't.
I don't know how people have the energy to do side projects and stuff like that, because it's so much energy just doing one project, really. So I'd never understand how people can split themselves over, say, 3 bands and fully commit.
I think some people just like to be so caught up with work that they feel like they don't, they have so much to do.
That's not a bad thing either, keeping yourself busy. But I don't know how you can really fully invest yourself. That's the thing.
Yeah. It's like, then you start wondering, like, are you putting like 120% into your own brand, or are you kind of phoning it in? Yeah. So it's like, it does take a lot to kind of cultivate like your best work. And, but it's interesting thing about like recording. I always ask bands, like, okay, are you the kind of band that you feel like you got your song down by like the 3rd take, or you're a band that does like 10, 20, 30 takes to get it? Like, what do you feel about that type of effort in the studio? Do you think after a while you get diminishing returns?
You can definitely overwork a song. In fact, I don't think we've ever released a song where we were 100% happy with it anyway. I feel like it's so hard to know when you're finished, when you're mixing yourself and you're producing yourself and you've kind of got all the control. I think it would be different if we were just recording and we were sending off to a different mix engineer or a different producer to work with. But I feel like when you're doing everything, it's so hard to let go and sign off on a project.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we do loads of takes. We do rewrite entire songs, add layers and layers until sometimes you start to question whether you even like the song anymore.
Yeah, because I mean, I kind of went down that road where I was into this Phil Spector thing, kind of like you think about like Bruce Springsteen, and you know he spent like 6 months putting together his big track, and it just never was finished. But then I kind of started thinking about this kind of different kind of punk aesthetic, or even like a jazz thing. I'll put down like 3-4 takes, and then I was like, I kind of go to the earlier takes, just because the further I get away from the first take, the more diluted what my original intention was. And then I find like if I really want my original intention to come out, I kind of like will leave that happy accidents. Maybe it's imperfect, but I've always been the kind of glitch kind of thing. Like I say, I like, tonight's the night. I like stuff that's kind of falling apart. So I kind of purposely do it because that's kind of like
I know what you mean.
motif.
I think we have the same thing. Like when we record a part, and if we quantize it too close to the grid, or if we've, fine-tune something too much, I think you can lose something from that, like the original performance of it. And like we try and avoid it as much as we can.
Yeah, even like yeah. Do you even find that with vocals? I was talking to some like female artists that are like primarily vocalists, and I actually was interesting. I was talking to one that actually put down her vocals on like a 4-tracker, and then went into a studio and spent a bunch of time trying to get it perfect. And then the producer ended up going with the 4-track demo version of the vocal. And it was just because it was like more honest and more close to the original feel of the song. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it's kind of like the way I would approach it. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like that kind of thing can happen where like you think it's like, well, I got to spend all this money. I get to do all this. I got to spend all this effort. And then sometimes it's like the simple version of it. Like the one I did on my phone, actually all glitchy with the noise and everything, actually is the best.
I know what you mean. Like sometimes when we're recording vocals, we'll use a pedal. I don't think they actually make it anymore, but it's a TC Helicon synth pedal for voice. So it kind of does some synth effects and distortions on vocals, and we record that alongside the dry. And I think even though the pedals, it's unpredictable and it's harder to work with, but sometimes it just gets a better tone, and so we end up using that one rather than trying to like over labor it with our own sort of fine tuning and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's real important because like a lot of people with music, especially with like the DAW, has kind of gotten people into doing things. When I've talked to people and I've collaborated with people, is like sometimes they clean it too much. The EQ is so clean that I'm like, I like it a little more dirty. Yeah. I like it a little more raw. And some people are like, well, they got to have that clean feel because they like everything you hear on the radio's got that clean feel. But then I said, well, go back and listen to the radio in 74 and 78 or 68 and 69. Go back and listen to a vinyl record and you'll hear the mistakes, and it actually brings the character to the great songs of those eras. Is they're full of mistakes. They're full of recording mistakes, tons of like hiss and clips. You can actually hear them cutting the tape and stuff, but it actually brought character to the song. And it's kind of like, well, how do you kind of capture that? Well, you kind of let it be.
I agree. Like sometimes, like if it just sounds good, we'll just leave it in. Like if there's just a weird little string noise that we got when we're recording the guitar, or just a breathiness like before a vocal take, we don't always just cut it out just because we think that should be done. I think we try and leave some. Like sometimes, like at the end of the song, you can let the guitar just ring out as if it rather than just cutting off hard the end of the take, because then I don't know, it kind of keeps the feel that it was a real guitar that was recorded, and it stops it from becoming just like something that's purely only inside the computer.
Yeah, that's why I love my Moog spring reverb, because sometimes I'll let it ring out at the end of a song to kind of just have this kind of 70s feel, where you got this real spring reverb, not a digital one, an actual spring, and you hit it to get that kind of bang. Like when you hit a real spring reverb, you actually physically hit it, it actually kind of makes this strange kind of glitchy sound. And it's cool to kind of leave at the end of a song, or leave it in a little bit of a break to kind of, or have it as a shadow track, like under something, to give it a little more depth. And that's the kind of stuff that just like over time you just
I think it's cool. Like when you can actually hear that someone had actually done something and left it in, rather than just trying to treat everything like, oh no, it needs to be absolutely perfect. I think you can just make it sound just clinical and lose the charm of it.
Yeah. So what are you feeling about like live performing? Have you kind of transferred to like the ability to look at streaming as a way of performing what you guys do? Because you guys have such a physical show that's visual and kind of needs to be done on a stage. Have you found any way to replicate that online, or you just wait
just before lockdown,
physical venue?
Back at the very end of 2019, we did kind of like the latest version where we included a live drummer, and I did the synth, and Rich obviously did the vocals, and that was, I think we both agreed they were the best shows that we've ever done. But we only played 2 shows under that like new formation with the live drummer, and then we went off to Canada to play a couple shows, but we couldn't bring the live drummer, so we went back to our old like version without the drums and stuff, and it didn't translate and have as much energy as with the drummer. So and then like a month or 2 later, lockdown hit, and obviously there's not been any gigs for about a year now. So yeah, it's hard to really even think about live gigging right now. But once gigs do reopen, we'll probably just follow the same formula and do it how we do.
So you think the live drummer, like what are you doing?
Yeah, well, for years we didn't have one. It was just me and Rich, and most gigs people would say afterwards like, "Oh, you should really look at getting a live drummer," and we'd always sort of brush it off and be like, "Yeah, whatever, it's just some like out of touch person giving us like." There are 2 cents that we didn't care about, but eventually we thought, we're going to try it, and we were just like absolutely in agreement that it just does add so much, you know what I mean, to the mix.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember my incarnations of my band. When I actually had a bass player, a drummer, and a guitar player, I always feel that has more kick, because that's what I like to go see myself. So I know if when I'm just doing my modular rig, it's a different type of show. And it's kind of like trying to show that you can be like one guy doing all this stuff. But yeah, if I have a real drummer, it's going to kick off a lot more, because then I don't have to try to do all that with all my foot pedals. Because I'm trying to, like, when I'm doing a one-man show, I'm trying to run all these sequencers, run all this analog gear with all these foot pedals and all these controllers. And I don't really have anything going on Ableton. I kind of go off of like LFOs. I have all these LFOs kicking stuff off. And so I'm kind of going. And the one thing I like about that is it sounds more organic, because I can kind of let the modular analog synths make it sound more real. And so when I go to do it, it doesn't sound as fake as if it was just like an 808, just keep on kicking. It can actually sound a little different. And I can trigger different LFOs to kick off the different machines. And so by using all these analog CV controls, I can get a feel. But like, of course,
for sure. The only trouble is trying to get the drummer to play in time, because obviously it's so hard to get them to hear the timing. But fortunately, using like an Ableton and a computer, you can have like a send using a Focusrite.
You can.
Yeah, exactly. And we managed to get like a wireless headphone pack to our drummer, and that was amazing to so he could hear himself playing. So yeah. Exactly.
Did
Yeah,
they give them like
exactly. Yeah.
a click? Did they give
And
them
using
like a
Ableton,
click
you
track to go
can
with everything?
each person can have their own different mix, how
Wow.
they like it, you know, which is just, you know, a dream come true, really. So
Yeah, I kind of do that with my Zoom L20. It can run different mixes out. Because I do everything kind of like on hardware, but it can send like, I don't know, like 6 different mixes out. So you can get that kind of feel. But yeah, because I'm always like, I don't know. I've gotten so I'm a computer guy. My day job is like IT,
Right. Yeah.
and maybe that's
Yeah.
why I don't use Ableton. Because my day job is IT, so I'm like, you know what? I went and switched everything to this analog modular, and using hardware tape machines and stuff. But I don't know. It's just I got this Alexander Cortini kind of feel. Like I was watching this thing where for 9 Inch Nails, he actually has like Tascam 8 and 16 track tape recorders with all these cassettes, and he like goes and unmutes stuff coming off of these old tape machines
Wow.
when he does live gigs. Which was kind of a cool way to do it because it has a different sound and feel.
I definitely appreciate the aesthetics of doing that. It's just the nightmare of bringing tape machines to a gig. I don't know. I can't imagine the hell of trying to.
Yeah, I guess he loves that. You know, I don't know if you ever seen a lot of stuff from him, but like he does all this Buchla stuff, which is like West Coast really kind of difficult modular synthesis to control, and he has all these modular rigs along with this tape stuff, and he's running all that stuff with pedals, and he kind of makes it hard on himself on purpose. And I guess I kind of take the same aesthetic. That's kind of the whole joy of it for us people who go that way.
Right,
or
sure.
Like the difficulty is the joy.
It's just that it's stressful. I can imagine as well. Like if you're setting up all your modular synths, you know, and you've got like a 10-minute changeover time at a gig, you know, there must come times when you think, I wish I brought my laptop.
Well, that's when you click into your digital sense like a Phantom. That's like my big trick. Is my Phantom's almost like having Ableton, and so I can let that do something while I let the other stuff reset. So I still like a hardware guy, so I like the workstation idea. So I'll use like a Core Kronos or a Phantom, and it basically can do like a whole set list. And so that gives me the more stability of having like an Ableton thing, but then it's all in the sync. And so then I just run it that way, and then I run the other modular stuff. I can reset while letting something else run.
I mean, it leaves a little to go wrong when you've got something a bit more stable in the mix. I think we've had something you can rely on.
Something more stable somewhere. Just in case you mess up, which is that Murphy's Law. Something's always going to go wrong every gig. Somebody unplug your line.
Show stuff is the worst for gremlins in the system. And
the more links to the chain you've got.
You guys have to have like a backup laptop.
We've got a MacBook Air Pro, which is fairly reliable. We've seen a band with a like a normal PC, and that crashed halfway through the set. And
PCs are kind of notorious. It's not.
They had like a live out as well, like a HDMI out. What was on the screen of the laptop onto a projector behind them, it like doubled up the sort of cringe factor of it crashing, because not only could you hear it, the sound of the XP as it was like rebooting up, but you could see like the desktop, the background as well. And I thought, oh man, this is say what you will about
that kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And MacBooks being overpriced and stuff, but it's when stuff like that goes wrong, you'll pay every penny for that MacBook Pro, because you're going to want it.
Well, my daughter's a graphic artist, and she she got me into the Macs.
Oh, they just are, absolutely. And I know people mind about the price and stuff, but it will.
Well, if you're
it's going to come back to bite you in the ass eventually, and
crap out.
you're going to feel, it's going to come pay one way or another, So I'd rather fork out for a MacBook on a credit card if I had to. And
Well, that's why I got my Rolands. To my Rolands, like if I bring them in my road case to New York, my Moogs are more sensitive.
Yeah.
But my Rolands are like dead reliable. I never have trouble with those, and it's just I've had them for so long, they don't crash on you. I don't work for them, but I don't have any trouble with them going down. Other things I have do go down. They're more sensitive, so I kind of stick with the one thing that I know is not going to go down. Is the main thing for the gig. But you go with what you got to. Absolutely. As a musician, working musician, you got to use what's going to work. So you guys, I'm glad to have you on the show. We got this worked out. That this app was giving me a little bit of trouble a couple of days ago, but it seems to have stabilized. So I'm glad. So this is going to go out on our Spotify and our Apple podcast and 9 other platforms, and we'll send you the link through the method we've been communicating. It'll be available within an hour, and we'll just send it to you. And we'll push it on our Instagram as a story. And feel free to copy the story link we're going to push up. And we're glad to have you on the show. If you guys want to come on the show again, you got your new projects ready to go, give us a ring and we'll set it up. And if you ever want to do the video podcast option and you're ready to do it, let us know. And we're kind of going into that because it seems to kick it with the audience.
Yeah, sure.
And everybody's visual. So
that's great. Yeah, thanks for asking us to be on, and I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, great. Bone Call, everybody check it out. Go out to the link that's going to be on the podcast. Remember to support the bands you love. Get all their merch, all their stuff that they're doing. And, buy their record on Amazon, buy it on iTunes if you can. We always tell people to support the bands you love.
Thank
you very much for being on the show, guys. I'll talk to you later.